Hello, TPR Nation. This is Amber Kuhn from The Perfect RAA. Thank you for joining me on today's Follow-Up Friday, where I'll be covering the highlights and action items from this week's episodes. Now, a reminder before I get into today's recap. If you're enjoying our episodes, we'd love for you to give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts, and even share your favorite thing in your review. Moving into this week's recap, Monday was a special episode as Michael Kitces joined the show, and Matt wanted to talk about everyone's burning question. Does Michael Kitces sleep? The answer is yes. But Michael shared that he even posted his Fitbit sleep schedule readout on his website just to prove that he does sleep. But he said he's a total night owl and not a morning person, but he does pack a lot into his days. He said that he went through that same phase that most people do when they're starting a business. You launch and you hope someone is engaged and that any revenue is better than no revenue. Then once you get through that initial phase, you realize that numbers are okay and you don't have to quit and find another job. Then things start to grow, and then they can start to get really hectic. He talked a bit about his background in the advisor world, where he was teaching and training advisors, and he was the director of financial planning, and he realized that he wasn't good at managing people. It just wasn't his happy space. But that led to some head trash and thinking that he couldn't build a team and that he'd have to do everything himself when he was building his business. So that forced him to be focused on trying to be as efficient as possible. He eventually found someone to handle a lot of the administrative tasks, and this worked for a few years as his business continued to grow, but he got to a point where he was working 7 days a week, all hours of the day. So he was becoming so successful, but he wasn't enjoying the number of hours that he was spending working. Michael talked about managing time based on Stephen Covey's analogy and how we all have the same amount of time and you have to determine how to fill your time with the ideas of a jar with rocks, pebbles, and sand, with rocks being those big things that you can do to move your life forward. The pebbles, which aren't life-changing, but they do require some urgency, and then the sand being those things that just never stop. And the reality is there's always more to do than there is time. And most people fill their time with things that are passive, but that are always there. And then those things that are the really important ones just don't fit. So you need to focus on the big things first. He finally looked at his calendar and added up all the days that he needed for each of the things that he was doing, and it turned out to be 353 days. So of course he was feeling overloaded. He was saying yes to every opportunity, and he said it took him years to unbury himself. And finally, he was able to give himself his Sundays back and then weekends with his family. But he had to sit down and calendar out each of his days so that he wasn't doing more work than there were days in the year. From there, he got hyper-focused on where his time is going, and it's all on his calendar. His assistant has a running spreadsheet of where his time is going because, as Matt pointed out, you probably aren't going to be honest with yourself about your time. So for the question that he gets on how does he do what he does, it's because he's gotten so good at prioritizing where his time goes to maximize his impact with everything he's involved in. Michael said the real driver around productivity is focus management. And what are you doing with your time that does the most to grow your business and move it forward? He said this is why Surge works so well, because you don't have time for all those little things and you have to be hyper-focused. And now here's another tip. He doesn't have any notifications that pop up except for 4 people in his life. He said he's going to look at things on his terms and on his time, so that way he doesn't get pulled out of things that he doesn't need to focus on. And he also shared that it's less about discipline and more about how do you create the systems around you so that the temptations aren't there. And then you don't need to be disciplined. You just focus on the only thing that's in front of you anyway, because you set that as the priority. Let's get into action items. Don't worry about discipline and don't beat yourself up about it. Put some forcing mechanism in place and make it happen. And if you're not already learning from Michael, be sure to check out kitces.com. On Wednesday, Matt was joined by TPR INVICTUS member Wayne Firebaugh. Wayne is a financial advisor and also a host of Fireproof Your Money, his daily feature that broadcasts on over 300 stations. Matt was sharing how he and Wayne share some similar core beliefs, some inspired by Nick Murray and some just from experience that allowed them to be more present during client meetings and communicate with more confidence. Wayne said that it allows him to focus on the conversation in front of him, and it gives him language to use with a client. He said that you hold your clients' lives in your hands, so you want to be completely present. Wayne said that he knows what he believes so that he has a line that he doesn't cross, and that this isn't about being ethical. This is about what he believes, and then he makes sure to document his reasons why he believes something. And if he ever discovers that his beliefs are incorrect or incomplete, he'll change them. And really, what this comes down to, as Matt shared, is that when they're doing research, these beliefs are held lightly. But once you're in a client meeting, then those beliefs become rock solid, and that if you don't have firm beliefs, you're just sort of going with the wind. Wayne said that his belief system is somewhat of a mental checklist of what his process is and how he approaches a problem, and he views this as part of being intentional. He also said that this comes into play with clients that aren't a good fit, but when he decided to bring them on anyways, it's because they weren't a good fit with his belief, because that's such a big part of how he's running his business, from how he manages portfolios to insurance and tax planning. So, when he has those beliefs documented, it results in the less likelihood of bringing on those clients that aren't a right fit. Also, as they shared, by having these beliefs written down as a process, then it no longer becomes an emotional decision. And clients like this because they know that you've actually taken time to think through a situation to create a policy for it. Matt brought up that beliefs can change over time, as they had talked about earlier, and sometimes advisors feel as though they've pigeonholed themselves. But as he shared in his own experience, he always does what he feels is best for the client at that time. But he's always looking for a better way, and if he's found that, then he's going to make that adjustment. Now, in addition to evolving your beliefs, they said that you need to be strengthening your beliefs. For example, current events. Matt said that it's important to constantly strengthen his belief that he doesn't respond to the market, both as a reminder to himself and to clients. Matt and Wayne wrapped up by talking about his experience in the radio space and how that translates to advisors with the information that they're sharing. He said that it's important to reduce the complex topics to be simple and to make them relevant. He said you need to remember that the things advisors are doing, you're talking about it every day. But for your clients, that's not an everyday thing. So you can repeat things to clients and they can always find something new out of what you're saying. So you need to have that simplicity and repetition. Wednesday's action item was to create what you believe and then figure out how to convey it to clients. On Thursday, Jamie shared information that she learned at a recent conference. She said that these financial conferences are great because she gets an opportunity to talk with people and hear about their background and experiences, especially because a lot of people didn't just start in financial planning and that this career is something they began in their 30s and 40s. Jamie was talking about someone that she met at this conference who previously ran a staffing agency, and they ended up being a wealth of knowledge for her because Jamie runs several organizations and staffing is a constant conversation. So they're always recruiting and always looking for talent and paying attention to industry changes. Jamie shared how she decided to have business cards printed that said, "If you're ever looking for a job, I want the first crack." And the reason was because you know if you've met someone who is just really good at what they do, or they try really hard, or they're just really good communicators. It's that person that goes above and beyond. So Jennifer shared with Jamie that she does the same thing. Jamie shared the action items she took from that conversation with Jennifer, which was instead of thinking about printing business cards, to just send it over to a graphic designer to create it with a QR code to a landing page that would allow someone to submit their resume whenever they're looking for a job. Then Jamie can carry those around with her and she can hand them out to anyone she thinks has that special something, regardless of what industry they're in. She believes that if you find people with common values, you can change the world, but you have to be willing to open some type of window or door for them. Jamie said it's important that when you recognize those individuals who are doing those great things, that you call it out because people love compliments and they're going to remember those things that you said. She said a lot of times people are just in the grind and focused and your head is just down getting stuff done, but you need to do what Jamie shared from her dad, Floyd, which is called an up periscope, where you look around to make sure that you're making the impact you were made to make. She said you need to make sure that you're connecting with other professionals and learning from them and being curious. Don't worry about being interesting. She said be more curious about someone else's life, their background, and their experiences. Imagine what possibilities are out there if you just took a moment to not think about yourself, but instead think about others and connect with them in the most profound way that we have. And that's the sharing of knowledge. Let's get into action items. Create rules for going to conferences so that you're going to talk to people and push yourself out of your comfort zone. And then copy Jamie's idea about the business card to share with people that you meet, that you're hiring, and that you're growing. And even if you aren't hiring, you can always make an introduction to someone else. That wraps up this week's recap. Thank you for joining me, and please share this or any of our episodes with another advisor or a team member who you think might benefit from listening. And until next time, happy planning.